Last night I asked the publican of the White Cliffs pub what condition the back road to Mutawintji National Park was like. I told him the type of car we were travelling in, and he answered by saying, if I'm used to driving on outback roads, there shouldn't be any problems. It had been a few years since I had driven in the outback, but it didn't take long to adapt to changing road conditions. The wide track allowed me to find the best part to travel on, avoiding the many corrugations, but the odd rocks still seemed to appear too late for me to miss. When we arrived at Williams Creek, I was surprised to see large banks cut into the landscape. The amount of water necessary to erode the soil to this condition must have been huge. It was proof that at certain times of the year you just cannot travel in this area. Although the creek was dry, we could see where animals had dug into the creek bed to find water. So far we'd only travelled 43 kilometres from White Cliffs, but it was by no means a quick trip, with low speeds maintained for most of the journey. It's creek crossings like this where you have to slow down, especially if you're in a sedan, because you can scrape the bottom of the car if you take it too fast. We'd been driving for a number of hours by now, and these two emus were the first sign of life we'd seen since leaving White Cliffs. To make a comment on track conditions, you have to take into account what motor vehicle you're in. An experienced 4x4 driver would call this an easy track. I found it stressful because of the many rocks hitting the bottom of my car like the devil was trying to get in. There was still over 100 kilometres to go before we reached the national park, so I still wanted to maintain a reasonable speed, but dips in the road and corrugations had me gripping the wheel like a vice. We had plenty of time to see this emu, but on another occasion I had to brake suddenly because one of these big birds ran in front of the car, passing my bonnet with less than a metre to spare. That stupid bird did it twice, and I have no idea why he wanted to change from one side of the road and then back again. For most of the day we'd been driving under ominous grey clouds, which was a concern. We hoped the strong wind would push any rain away from our location. At the turn-off to Mutawintji National Park, we decided to take a break from driving, which also gave me a chance to see if there was any damage to the car. When walking, the emu takes strides of about 100 centimetres, but at a full gallop, the stride can be as long as 275 centimetres. The females are usually larger than the male bird, reaching nearly 2 metres at the top of the head, and can weigh as much as 60 kilos. The birds are common across most parts of mainland Australia, where they usually travel in pairs, but if there's plenty of food around, small flocks will start to gather. They are the second largest flightless birds in the world. Only the African ostrich is bigger. It took us until mid-afternoon to travel 150 kilometres to the national park. In all that time, we had not seen another vehicle. And the main reason why we're at Mutawintji is because way back in the 1990s, me and the two children put a time capsule at the top of this cliff, which you'll see in a minute, and we hope, and I hope, it's still there. So it's been a long time. Okay, where that large rock is where we're going to climb up, and then we're going to place the canister with our names and ages and the date. This note was placed here on Sunday the 26th day of January 1992. Members of the Uinton family from Victoria and Bolt are Colin Uinton, Stacey Uinton and Reese Uinton.
It's in there.
Nearly there. It had been over 20 years since I'd been on this ridge, and the chances of finding an old film canister was a bit far-fetched. I'm going to look down there to see if it's washed down there.
Okay.
Certainly don't want to leave this place until I've explored it.
Exhausted all avenues.
Yeah. We spent about an hour looking around, but as you would expect, we had no luck. Over so many years, there's a good possibility that it might have been washed out of the area. So I'm going to start looking down below to see if there's a canister just hanging around on the ground. I bet it got washed down here. A few raindrops indicated that the weather might change for the worse, so we decided, as it was only a few kilometres down the track, to have a quick look at the gorge before pushing on to Broken Hill. At the creek crossing, I found myself in the wrong type of vehicle again. Had a good look at this, and it looks a bit too soft for me. And I'm positive my car would get bogged here. Way back in 1992, my two children and I did manage to get to the gorge. There's a rock pool at the end of the gorge, and it didn't take long to realise that the local wildlife was taking advantage of the water. We disturbed a few wallabies as we made our way through the large boulders that littered the dry creek. We also saw a family of feral goats negotiating the cliffs, which showed that not only native animals were living in the area. another part of the national park, my son and I climbed a ridge to get a better view of the surrounding landscape.
Get to the top. What there is to see.
In this area there are a few Aboriginal rock paintings. This mark was left on the cliffs by William Wright, who was recruited as a member of the support group to the ill-fated Burke and Wills expedition in 1860. We wanted to stay in Broken Hill that night and headed south once again. When I see a rocky outcrop within walking distance from the car, I find it too much of a temptation not to climb it and see what lies beyond. By the end of the day, the total distance we had travelled was around 290 kilometres. Nearly all of that was on a rough dirt track through flat, featureless country.